Hey, welcome to episode 20 of The Sherveen Show. Every week we talk about startups, business, tech, and society. Let's get right into it. First up, we have the release of Grok 3 from our favorite oligarch, Elon Musk, and his company xAI. For those of you who haven't tried it yet, let me tell you what exactly is going on and how the model compares. First of all, there was some dubiousness with how exactly they presented the benchmarks of the model. There always is when AI companies are releasing their latest state-of-the-art models and benchmarks alongside them. They'll present the graph in new and interesting ways to try to tell a certain story. But in this case, it looks like they gave Grok more time, more of an ability to pick between sets of answers, and a couple other factors I won't get into in depth here when benchmarking it against OpenAI's product. So the reality is it didn't score as highly as some of the graphs you may have seen might indicate. They released not only the model itself, Grok 3, as a prompt and response model, but they released a deep search mode and a chain of thought think mode that allows it to run kind of what you'd expect a DeepSeek R1 to be running or OpenAI's O1 or O3 models. It's a decent model, but that's about it. It's just kind of decent. I use every single one of these models every single day. Grok has become part of my workflow too. I'll run prompts in Grok alongside Gemini, OpenAI's models, and Claude every now and then too. But it isn't good enough at any particular thing to replace anything in my workflow or take the number one spot. It is not top at writing. It is not top at research. It is definitely not the best at thinking or hard problems. It's like a fourth or fifth place model is the way I'd put it. Anyone who you see saying otherwise has some sort of incentive with Elon, has some sort of political agenda, or they're anti-OpenAI. Again, I have yet to see any of them post examples of head-to-heads where they actually do put whatever they're trying to do into an OpenAI or Google model. And if you tend to look at their timeline, if you're on X, then it'll be a bunch of other things over the past few months that indicate, again, they've got some other incentive for trying to pitch that xAI is our new overlord. But by my money, Sam Altman, OpenAI still have the number one spot. What is notable about the accomplishment, and will always be nuanced in this way, even though I'm not Elon's biggest fan, they did achieve this in a short amount of time. Now, that's not necessarily as impressive as they want it to be, and they keep talking about it now, because the reality is they are looking at what all these other companies are doing and creating state-of-the-art models, and they're throwing a lot of compute power at it, and so now they've got a state-of-the-art model. This is not as hard as it used to be. So when they go, oh, we've done this, we've become, a state-of-the-art, we've put ourselves in this really high-end group in a short amount of time. It took OpenAI forever, it took Google forever. Yeah, because they were the first to do it. It's like watching me jump a certain way, but I had to practice for 5 years to reveal a mechanic that I now do really, really well. And I do it in front of you. And then you copy me and you go, I did it in a day. No kidding. I showed you how. Anyway, moving on. Next up, we had Humane, the makers of the AI pin, if you remember that product, being bought by HP for $116 million. They had raised over $240 million. It was a super hype product. This is not an ideal outcome for anyone involved. What are our lessons? What are our takeaways from the Humane story? So again, for those who might not remember, the AI pin was the square-looking device that you would pin either using a magnet or a clip to your piece of clothing. It had a laser display that could display on your hand. The whole idea was you could touch it to prompt it with a verbal command to tell you the weather or to take down a note. And you could also read its responses in addition to hearing its responses by putting your hand in front of you and the camera on the device. And the laser printer on the device would essentially display text response on your palm. I bought one of these. I don't know exactly where it is, but I did that because I'm a longtime product person who believes I need to be at the edge of the user experiences that are being innovated on any given year, any given month. My take when I originally bought that product was it is what I refer to as an imagination agitating device. In other words, it was not good. There's no doubt about it. It was almost impossible to use. The interface was super clunky. Getting it to turn on was difficult. Getting it to stay on was difficult. There was almost no utility. It was bad. But there are truths to that sort of a product that are really, really interesting. For example, I do believe a laser display being projected on your hand or on other surfaces coming out of wearables is a future modality we're going to see used successfully. I do think the core idea of a wearable that you could talk to is really, really interesting. And, Meta is doing it better with their Ray-Ban glasses. But again, the idea of a wearable that isn't sunglasses or eyeglasses, having that sort of interaction method is a good one. And there are a bunch of other small things that the AI pen did well. But the place for imagination agitating products that aren't ready for prime time is not to be sold as if they're a replacement for your phone. They're not to be sold as a mass market device. And the challenge for Humane was that they raised so much money, they put so much hype behind the product, they made so many claims that they essentially put themselves out of the market of just people like me, technologists who like to buy these early products. Again, agitates our imagination and inspires us to think about the next generation of products that might be built. It gives us a peek into the future. All of that is super interesting and super fascinating. But when you make these grander promises, when you try to make this product work for the general consumer, you're going to get the negative reviews they got, the negative press they got. You get people making fun of them for this acquisition by HP. A bunch of people are joking that Humane is now going to be responsible for putting AI into printers and fax machines that also don't work. But you got to respect them for their imagination. And again, the product was not good. Most people shouldn't have bought it. It should have just been, again, for early adopters and technologists who like to play at the edge. And maybe version 4 or 5 would have been the thing that would have been worth a mass market approach. This acquisition is now probably mostly about retention packages to keep the team together. Investors definitely aren't making their money back. We don't know all the details of this deal, but this is just kind of a soft landing for a company that was probably otherwise headed to zero. Again, kudos to them for attempting something brand new. So much more challenging than people give it credit for to have released a product like the AI Pin. But again, I just would have changed their market approach. The two co-founders are going to be leading a new division called HPIQ. It's going to be an innovation division responsible for putting artificial intelligence into HP's PCs, printers, and connected conference rooms. They'll probably leave in the next year or two, I'm sure. Hopefully to build something we might all use. If you are one of the very few people listening or watching to this that also bought an AI Pin, I'm curious to hear about your thoughts in the comments. This is just a quick hit because there are not a lot of details behind this story, but the SEC has ended an enforcement case against Coinbase. I don't really want to get into the details quite yet because, again, there aren't that many. But the case was started under the former SEC Chair Gary Gensler, which, to quote the New York Times, had sued Coinbase in 2023 on the grounds that the digital currencies sold on its platform constituted unregistered securities that put consumers at risk of financial harm, which is undoubtedly true. The SEC should have sued Coinbase for this. This is a whole mess of an industry. Again, maybe for another day and another episode. Brian Armstrong has been a brat about cases that are being brought against Coinbase. You should just fight in the arena, and if you're being regulated because you are selling unregistered securities, that's on you. Every tweet about the subject from him has been a little bit too bratty for my liking. Look, I've liked Brian Armstrong in some moments around talking about employee performance in Silicon Valley and the expectations that we should have of people at work. But he's a giant hypocrite. He whines about the SEC again in what I would refer to as a bratty way, not that becoming of a public company CEO, at least of what I think a public company CEO should be doing. When he was talking about this case being dismissed to CNBC, he said that the prior administration tried to unlawfully attack this industry, and he hopes the new one will, quote, dismiss all the bogus cases. Nothing is bogus about these cases, and if you would have won them, you would have won them. The truth is the crypto industry and Web3 as a whole has done an immeasurable amount of harm to consumers on a broad basis. The people who have made their money are mostly wealthy people and technologists on the inside who have access that normal people do not have access to, appropriating a massive wealth transfer to themselves. And they continue to do it. It's not just the David Sacks of the world, although yes, it's him. It's not just Trump, yes, it's him. It's people whose names you don't know or who you only know maybe as technologists who work out of the valley. And again, this is my industry. I know a lot of these people personally. I've called several of them out personally. And I'm just kind of like tired of it because they've made a tremendous amount of money already and the greed is just quite unbecoming, in addition to being completely unethical. And again, I think we would have a different conversation that I'd be willing to engage in if there had been reasonable discussion about why this case was dismissed and what the pathway forward should be for Coinbase and companies in the crypto and Web3 space. I agree that there should be regulation that allows these things to operate less in a gray area, but instead with some certainty, allowing the entrepreneurs, the businesses, and the people involved to know that what they're doing transactionally is allowed under the law. But the actors within, in the meantime, have mostly appropriated major grifts upon the rest of society. They have not exactly conducted behavior becoming of people who should have a lot of space and room to complain or to operate in gray areas. And furthermore, this is not a win for them philosophically. Web3 basically died in the period post Donald Trump's last presidency. Venture capital became disillusioned with it. The folks who were loudest about it for, basically 5 years became completely quiet about it. All the startups that failed just kind of went away or became zombies. The space took a ginormous L. The reality is A16Z and David Sacks bought its way back into existence. It did not win anything. It did not prove value in the meantime. There are no use cases that have been added since we last all as an industry had this conversation. Instead, the major holders who still believe there are ways for them to extract money from everybody else using Web3 mechanisms bought Donald Trump's presidency. And congrats, now you get to take your victory lap and put it all back into place. But don't pretend in the meantime that it's out of virtue, righteousness, or being right. It isn't. It's just a grift. That's all I have to say for now. Okay, moving on, going back to a story that we constantly are going to be talking about and have talked about this year, the increasing value of proprietary content. I should say human-driven content in particular. Amazon has apparently paid $1 billion to secure creative control of the Bond franchise. The TLDR of this story is in 2022, Amazon bought MGM for $8 billion, 8.5 to be precise. As part of that agreement, Amazon had the rights to distribute the movies in the James Bond franchise, but they did not have the rights to create new movies and TV series within the franchise itself. That's still held by the kids of the man who originally acquired the rights to produce films out of the James Bond novel series. And so according to Deadline, Amazon just paid an additional $1 billion today to secure creative control. Beyond just the astounding numbers behind this story, I just think it points to our continuing trend of content being ever more valuable. But only certain types of content that can't just be natively or naturally erased by the AI wave. Reality television, news, sports, those areas are going to remain in the human domain. Yes, AI might change the workflows around producing them, but those inherently require a human at the center, right? Those are human interest spaces and stories. But certain franchises, I think, will also really benefit in this wave, whether it's a Star Wars, the Bond franchise. And what's interesting is the cost to produce a Bond film is going to dramatically decrease. Amazon is going to be probably excellent at utilizing AI tools to make hopefully better movies, but movies and TV shows in this franchise for less money. And so the rights themselves might feel expensive, but remember, these movies not only make a lot of money, but the cost to produce them, the cost to produce any sort of fictional story, is rapidly decreasing. So I expect to see a lot more of this actually over the next few years rather than less. Companies overpaying or what will feel like is overpaying for the rights to franchises where they believe, hey, we're going to be able to turn out a lot of content under this umbrella. Sure, it'll be hard to get new names and new franchises and new stories to be as important in American culture, because while a lot of our new content will be AI-driven, will be personalized, we'll be able to create our own stories for ourselves, there'll still be some tentpole franchises that drive a lot of interest and attention. And with this lower cost to produce, you might be able to sink. A company like Amazon might imagine a lot of ROI behind this initial purchase. We'll see. I don't know how they've done that Lord of the Rings deal, and that's the one that's pointed to, I think, more recently as, hey, maybe the streamers overpay for things, but we'll see. The final thing I want to touch on this week is just a call out to all of our listeners, my friends in venture capital. This is where I'm going to get a little bit political, but look what you have wrought. We're not going to replay it on the show, but for those who didn't catch it, the White House account on X, tweeted out a video of illegal immigrants being chained and put on a plane to be deported from America. They kept all of the sounds of people walking, of handcuffs being clicked in, and the text on the tweet says ASMR legal alien deportation flight. And it wasn't a mistake. Elon replied in encouragement. He quote tweeted it at some point saying, haha, wow. And all of you venture capitalists who supported this administration, supported the campaign, who turned their back on immigrant founders, but immigrant everybody in this country, who've lost their humanity and don't even understand that even an illegal immigrant deserves your sympathy and your respect and your empathy. Like, where have you gone? Where has your brain gone? These are people. ASMR? More like ASSHOLE. We have venture capitalists in the feedback loop every week. Some of my best friends are venture capitalists. I live with founders and VCs. I live with startup employees. I myself am a leftist center liberal who believes in markets and thinks, yes, this country could be doing better every single day. But you gave it up because you wanted it on the grift. You talk about the debt. You talk about woke culture and the jokes you feel you can't tell. The reality is all of that was just a lie. It was a lie because Trump was going to be good for the bottom line through a decrease in taxes and a decrease in regulation. I don't know if that's still going to be true because Elon is running so roughshod through everything that it might actually just cost the American economy so much to, catch up with it all. Not only that, we're ruining the long-term compromise that happens in a productive and healthy capitalist society between those at the top and those at the middle and the bottom. You're not supposed to make social services impossible to access for those who need it most. You're not supposed to attack vulnerable populations. You're not supposed to put on blinders and then just go after research and grants and science and academics. Folks I've spoken to have asked me the question of, but Sherveen, don't you believe there's fraud in the system? And didn't you see this? And didn't you see that? Look, first of all, most of you are fucking wrong. There was somebody who said to me, didn't you see that they gave, I don't remember what it was, cocaine to a pigeon? Do you really want us to be studying pigeons on cocaine? And if you took 2 seconds to look, you'd see a lot of these studies have some sort of reason for their treason. For example, we might give cocaine to a certain type of animal because that animal has a similar nervous system to ours. Without having to give cocaine to a human, we want to observe some of the mechanistic effects of a drug and a scenario and a certain stimulant on their heart rate or on their nervous system reaction or on certain behavior. In other words, again, we're not doing this because we're interested in giving drugs to pigeons. And look, again, there's so many more of these rants I can go on, but most of you are wrong. Most of the facts you bring to the table are lies. And even if I gave you a lot of those facts and those reasons, today there's a lot more waste and fraud than even I believe. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And as soon as the White House account tweeted ASMR illegal alien deportation flight, I lost a lot of the patience that I have been offering a lot of you because this is what you've enabled. I was pretty sure of it before that what you had enabled was the destruction of everything good about this country, but I wasn't 100%. Now I am. And I want you to know, I'll be in your inbox, I'll be in your DMs, I'll be in your replies. When you come to my events or I come to yours, I will be out loud about it because you made this trade. I don't care if you weren't one of the 4 people in the All In podcast, if you weren't Founders Fund or A16Z directly, although some of you, my friends, are. We're all friends with these individuals. We didn't call them out when we should have. Some of you even turned yourselves politically and put yourself in a pretzel to also support the Trump campaign. Or to say, oh, I'm struggling between these 2 choices. We could have just been living life is one of my overall points to you. Because the reality is it was all good. I don't care what Mark Andreessen says on a podcast. You weren't suffering over the past decade. Our industry was becoming more powerful, more wealthy, but we were getting resentful and mad that we were also being held accountable every now and then and being asked to uphold parts of a bargain where we were mostly benefiting. I don't know where to end this, so I'm going to just end on that. Again, I'll see some of you in your DMs. That's episode 20 of The Sherveen Show. Until next time, stay frosty.